All right, good morning everybody. Welcome to another round of coffee and questions. What's today's topic? I'm going to talk about restoration of an old antique wood burning stove that I got. Now, I had sold some yard art stuff that I had, and the guy in the trade said, hey, I've got these old wood burning stoves. There's two of them, and I just want to get rid of them. Would you be interested in them? And, look, would you knock off like 25 bucks or whatever it was? I said, yeah, sure, because I took a close look at them. So let's talk about that first, and I'm going to take you through every step, kind of quick. But the first thing you want to make sure of when I looked at these two stoves is, are they complete? Because trying to get replacement parts is going to be very difficult. And so, yeah, on the one, it was. On the second one, it was, but it was so damaged that I didn't even want it, and he kind of threw it in, and I'm like, okay, whatever. So the one that I restored is this one right here. Okay, now this supposedly came off the Santa Fe Railroad long time back. I don't know how old exactly. I can tell you it says Gray and Dudley. Then it's got a period, and then it says Nashville on the actual metal label itself that was on here. Anyway, so I had all the parts, okay, but this thing was a rusted flippin' mess. Let me show you a picture. Okay, so that's what it looked like. So never really tackled anything the way that I wanted to do this because I had to repair some cracks. There were some things, and I'll go over those with you. But the first thing was I wanted to derust it. So I washed it down real good, used a hand just wire brush, scrubbed it down, washed it off real good, let it dry. Then I used phosphoric acid. Now, there are lots of strippers out there that you can use, lots of chemical strippers, vinegar, water, all these different things you can buy and use. But I had some phosphoric acid. That's what I chose to use. Now this stuff is kind of wicked. You want to be real careful with it. Wear good thick gloves for sure, because it will start to sting and eat away at you on your skin. And you don't want to get it on concrete or anything like that and leave it lay there. It will actually start eating into the concrete. So find a place, I put it on there, I washed it down real good after I let it sit for a couple hours, and then I turned around, dried it real well, or let it dry real well, and then I disassembled it into pieces. Let me show you a couple of pictures. Okay, now after taking photographs of this thing and then dismantling it all the way down to just the basic parts, was to turn around and use a combination of a 4.5-inch angle grinder with wire wheels on them. Now I happen to have Forney wire wheels, and I'll show you the pictures right now. But I also have a benchtop grinder that has a wire wheel on there that's some other off-brand. So between my bench grinder with a wire wheel and the 4.5-inch angle grinders with the couple of wire wheels that I showed you, I derusted this thing. Now the phosphoric acid is going to neutralize all the rusting, and it helps get a lot of the crud off, but the wire wheels are going to take it down to where it is incredibly clean. Then I took each part. Now you can use denatured alcohol, I suppose, if you want, but I had acetone around, and then I wiped everything down with acetone inside and out. So I got every piece on here incredibly clean. Once I got it incredibly clean, then I turned around and I started thinking about, okay, the cracks. How am I going to approach and tackle these cracks? Well, the best way is by brazing. And again, me personally, I order stuff off Amazon. All the links will be below on everything that I talk about. But I use brazing rod and flux. I don't want it, there was several cracks in different parts of this, but where the heat was the most intense was going to be down in this lower section, right? And so these are the areas I definitely wanted to braze. Brazing cast iron is a son of a gun. It really is. It's very, very difficult because I am not a pro welder. I weld okay, but welding cast iron is something that I've never done. And so I read and watched some YouTube stuff, and I went ahead and tackled it. And it was very time consuming for me, and it was a pain in the ass, to be honest with you, but I did it. And so I got those filled. Now, when you have a crack in this, the way that I approached this was, below that crack, about 1/8 of an inch, I drilled a hole. That way the crack cannot continue. And that's good advice off of a lot of YouTubers and people that do these restorations. So I drilled the hole, and then I turned around with a die grinder, or a couple of them, which I have right here. These are air die grinders. You can use electric ones or whatever you want. But this one's got a cone tip on there, and it's for cutting into metal, cast iron, stuff like that. And I created a V groove. Now, I created that on the front, and then I turned it inside and I did it on the back. Okay, now, here's my theory on why I did that. I was watching YouTube videos where they were telling me that sometimes these things fail, and the reason why, they fail is they're welding manifolds and blocks and stuff like that, but they're only trying to prep one face of things. And so then I started looking at people that were restoring cast iron stoves and other stuff like that, and they were also having a lot of difficulty with it. So on all of the cracks, I prepped them that way by drilling the hole, creating the V groove inside and out, and then I went ahead and I brazed as many of them as I could. Now, here comes the part that's real controversial, is on some of these, like up in here and up in here, there were some small minor cracks, but I prepped them the same way, but this time I used a different product. The two products that I used are made by JB Weld. One of them comes in a little round tub. I'll show you a picture. And now the other one is a putty, which I actually still have right here. So I thought I would try these two products and let me see how they worked out. So I bought them. This one, the putty's cheaper. I think it was like about $5 or $6. And the actual other one in the round canister was about $12 or $14, somewhere in there. So I bought one of each. The putty's good up to about 450, 500 degrees. And then the other extreme epoxy is good up to like 1,000 degrees. Okay, and so I thought, okay, well, I just got to be careful where I use these. But I have the metal on some of the thinner parts of this. I did V grooves both front and back with the holes drilled. Hey, let's try it. So these were areas that were away from where the extreme heat was down below here. This is where the fire is built, and then it's going to travel up. 1,000 degrees, I figured, okay, maybe I can get away with not having to braze everything, so I decided to try it. So I went ahead and I filled those. Let's stop and talk about these for a minute. The putty, I guess it worked okay. I'm not like a real super fan of it, because when you take the putty out, you have to knead it like you would like dough. Then you better use it quickly because it starts to harden fast, okay? So I found the best way to do it is like for cracks and stuff, you can use like a razor blade or something that's flat, or you can use your fingers and a glove and actually just push it in and push it up and push. And that was the way that I did it, because I was able to push the putty deep into the crack. Okay, now on the inside, I did the same thing. So again, my theory is with a V groove on the outside, on the inside, I fill this on the outside, pressing with my finger, make it nice and smooth. Then I'm gonna sand it down and blend it in so that when I paint it, it doesn't show. On the inside, I did the same thing. But this time, using the tub epoxy, which I liked better, I kind of painted it on and overlapped onto the other cast iron on both sides of that V groove. Okay, that way with 1,000 degrees, hopefully it withstands, this thing would hold up and it's not going to re-crack. So we'll see. I mean, what I did after this was all completed, and I did that and I sanded it down and I prepped it for paint. I used Rust-Oleum, this high heat black, because I knew that I'd have to paint it because a lot of this was going to show all the repairs. And right now, I don't believe any of them but one show. There's one up on the very top crown here where there's a lot of intricate work. It was hard to get in there and kind of smooth it down, like, and make it super flat. And it shows a little, but the rest of them don't show at all. Now, the other thing that I used when I reassembled this is I used this DAP, high fire resistant, high heat mortar. It's in black. You can get it off Amazon. Like I said, the links are below. And I turned around and I sealed every aspect of this coming from the top all the way down. And on the fire door, you can buy fire cord. It's cheap. It's off Amazon also. And this creates a tight seal on everything so you don't have all these leaks. Okay, so the question is when I'm done and I've sealed everything, and is it going to work? Okay, well, I built about 10 fires in here and I just let them really rage and I let them burn out on their own. And I watched it and I didn't have any leaks. So I knew that it wasn't leaking, but the question became, will it hold up between the putty and the other tub of epoxy, which is more costly? That's the one I liked more. So with this, even though there was a couple of cracks that I did use this putty on, I didn't like it as much, so I stopped using it. That's the reason why I still got the container, and I don't have the container on the actual other little tub of epoxy that I figured worked much, much better. It was a lot easier to apply and overlap and do everything I wanted to do. So I made sure I went over everything, and there were only like 1 or 2 small cracks where I used the putty, but I still went over those with the extreme heat epoxy. And this thing's been holding up well so far. Now the question is, in the long run, is it going to hold up without recracking? I hope so. So far it has. Like I said, I built a bunch of raging fires in this thing and it has held up and it has not cracked out. Now, one of the things I think to get out of this is if you're able to, let's say, weld prep or prep, depending on if you're going to do the brazing or if you're going to use these epoxies, is can you prep both sides of that crack? First key, make sure you drill the hole so the crack doesn't continue. Second, create the V-groove, fill it well, and overlap it like on the part that doesn't show. On the outside, I knew that that could be a weaker place because I'm sanding it down flush and flat, but I knew on that back side I really had put it on thick and overlapped it. So like I said, so far it's holding up great. I think it's a good product depending on your use. Would I use it on the manifold of a car or a block or something like that? Probably not. But if you're restoring things that are like antique-y, like I did with this, and it's cast iron, it could be a good alternative to trying to braze. The brazing, you know, I got through it on the bad cracks, but it's a hell of a learning curve. I found brazing cast, no matter how many videos I watched or whatever, it's very hard to do, again, because I've never done it before and I'm not an expert. If you are, great. That's the best way to go. Okay, I'm the Home Handyman, and I hope you click subscribe. I hope you keep following me. Drop a comment below if you know how old this stove is. I tried to figure it out. I couldn't. I'm estimating somewhere around 100 years old, but the nice part about this is all the pieces were here. I was able to restore it. It looks good. What am I going to do with it? I have no idea, but it's kind of a fun project. Like I said, if you needed the nuts and bolts, those things are available at the hardware store, but make sure it's complete. Check it over real well. Take a look for where the cracks are and are you going to be able to repair them and how are you going to be able to repair them. That's my advice to you. Now, I would tell you definitely, you know, you should consider doing some of these projects, especially if you've got kids or family or something like that, especially kids. Get your son out in the garage, get him involved. It's a fun project and nice gratification when it's done. Okay, you folks have a great day and I'll see you again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.